Hey everyone, Chloe here and welcome back to my channel. And if you are new here, ladies and lurkers, welcome. So I wanted to take a deeper dive to offer up some feminine insight, to do a little unpacking, and to share a few unpopular opinions. And I also wanted to shed some light on the consistent presence of girl-on-girl crime and why it will always be an issue amongst women, particularly unhappy women, and more specifically in the realm of men when it comes to having love in your life and being loved on in relationships and marriage and family and children, as these are the lifestyle issues that tend to cause many women to be defensive, offended, and will often cause women to be very emotionally triggered, especially when she is feeling within herself a strong feeling of lack and a strong sense of loneliness, which is very difficult to admit, especially when she is coping and dealing with feelings of deep hurt, deep shame, and deep insecurity. And usually when a woman does not have a healthy outlet to process her emotional pain, she will project, harass, and play the blame game so that she doesn't have to look in the mirror within herself. Now, for those of you who follow me on Hypogamous Hive, and shout out to the Hive, because you guys are phenomenal with the insight and the respectful disagreements that you continue to share, and I absolutely love our dynamic community. But for a bit of a backstory, and for those of you who don't know, Miss Tabitha Brown, who is an actress, a wife, a mother, a vegan chef, and is a very popular family-oriented social media influencer, caused more than a bit of a commotion and a social media stir, more specifically in the femininity and the hypergamous community, when she announced that she would be, in her words, retiring her husband due to her astronomical success as a social media influencer. And the specific details of how her husband's retirement would play itself out were never specifically addressed up front. And let me know, ladies, down below if Miss Tabitha owes the internet an explanation of her decisions. But the lack of specific details about this retirement caused many women to jump to conclusions, and many women responded to Tabitha's announcement quite viciously, and many unfounded judgments and future predictions of disaster and doom and marriage failure darts were thrown at Tabitha, to the point where some of the retirement speculation turned into straight up lies. But this is what will happen when you live your life on the internet and when your marriage becomes a part of your brand and a source of entertainment for others. But then, to add lighter fuel to the fire, the bona fide masculina Miss Wendy Williams decided to give Tabitha even more popularity by using her platform, The Wendy Williams Show, to express her salty thoughts on Tabitha's public decision with a very dismissive attitude, and by comparing apples and oranges, and by using a very broad paintbrush to throw salt on and to predict a future demise of Tabitha's 23-year relationship and marriage to her husband, Mr. Chance Brown. Now, no one is faulting the fact that Wendy Williams has a job to do, and it is a very common talking point that her job and her brand is to deliver gossip. But people have a very nasty habit of equating gossip to wisdom, when in reality, gossip will often lack nuance, because gossip at its core is a form of flattened, shallow entertainment. But gossip can also be weaponized in ways that are acidic, caustic, mean girlish, unladylike, and can and will be used as a narrative to project, to shame, to humiliate, and to embarrass. Now, we all know that a bitter and a scorned woman is the worst person to take advice from. And clearly, in my opinion, Wendy is an unhealed, broken woman who is desperately shooting her shot at her guests and who is throwing herself at anyone who is willing to entertain her. But we also know that Wendy is still dealing with the soul sickness of her divorce depression that is stemming from her loveless marriage to Mr. Kevin Hunter, who from the beginning was a cheater and who used Wendy and her boss energy as a come up, and who eventually used Wendy's bag to openly and disrespectfully fund his side chick and his love child. And for over 20 years, Wendy turned a blind eye to her husband's infidelity until the humiliation of having to fund a side baby became too unbearable for her ego to tolerate. But for years, she protected the narrative and the sacredness of her marriage as she wore the mask and pretended in delusion that her and Kevin had an ironclad power couple family unit when nothing could be further from the truth. But as usual, misery loves company and glass houses love throwing stones, which is why, as a feminine tip, ladies, when you are being criticized and judged harshly, always consider the source and ask yourself, would you want to wear that person's shoes? But Wendy, and some of you are not going to want to hear this, but Wendy, like so many other dysfunctional women, decided to use the common defense mechanism of projecting to create and to paint a false narrative and a false picture and a false equivalency, where she used the outcome of her busted marriage by comparing it to Tabitha's 23-year marriage of togetherness in struggle and strife and building and sacrificing. And now that Mrs. Tabitha has found her pathway to success, she is now sharing that success with her family and her husband, who is in the very unique position of being an LAPD police officer, which is a very dangerous blue-collar field. So together, they made the decision that it was time for her husband to put himself on a path where he can finally go after and actualize his dreams. Now, of course, Tabitha's decision is not a hypergamous one, and I will get to that discussion in a minute. But her marriage, like so many other marriages for the most part, is based on the give and take foundation of 50-50, and is a marriage that is driven by togetherness and cooperation and building and partnership and compatibility and chemistry and love. And there are millions of marriages that are based on the 50-50 dynamic. And in the gamble that is called marriage, some will work and many won't, and some will survive the instability, the financial insecurity, and the typical ups and downs that come from the ground up with builder marriages. But in Tabitha's case, 23 years together is nothing to throw away and is nothing to sneeze at. So at a base level, women need to keep in mind that Tabitha's marriage was never hypergamously driven to begin with, because this couple has known each other since high school or even possibly younger. But in response to Wendy speaking death over her marriage, Mrs. Tabitha, as the ever-growing public figure that she has become, did what needed to be done and gathered Wendy by her bossip edges with a sneering and a nice nasty smize, while sharing with the casual followers a deeper background check of her marriage. And to the casuals like myself, she expressed the nuances that were involved in her and her husband's coupled decision, and by telling her 3.6 and counting million followers that Wendy is a woman who isn't being loved and is therefore a woman who is in a lot of pain. And let me know in the comment section below if you believe that hurt women hurt women. And Tabitha basically King James Bible read Wendy Williams for filth, as it is no secret that Wendell has always used her platform to consistently and hypocritically to tarnish, to bash, and to hatefully, and sometimes even viciously, tear other black women down. But in my feminine opinion, Wendy has certainly paid a spiritual price, and this isn't discussed often enough, but she has certainly paid a spiritual price for doing her job, because her job comes with a very highly charged negative frequency. And while Wendy is quite accomplished, as she has always had her own bag, she is the furthest from having feminine abundance. Now, in regards to Tabitha, of course, as a woman whose husband has always been a provider, and as a woman who is actually living the hypergamous life, and as a woman who cherishes and who puts a premium on my privacy and my family privacy, of course, I do not condone nor do I approve of role reversal, because it tends to disrupt and erode both the masculine and the feminine principle. So Tabitha's public decision in publicly announcing that she was retiring her husband was certainly very cringe, and was certainly very masculina, and will certainly be very emasculating to any man, as all men, even a homeless bum, will have the masculine wiring of pride, and no man wants to be put in a public position of having his masculinity devalued, poured water on, extinguished, or feminized. Because not only is he emasculating, but as a public figure, he will now have to deal with the fallout, the embarrassment, and the shame of now being viewed as a moocher, a leech, a couch surfing bum, an opportunist, a lazy husband, and all kinds of nasty left field accusations that will be used to defame his character by an ever-growing hungry public that thrives off of seeing dysfunction and seeing others fail, and who thrives off of seeing marriages implode. So Tabitha's announcement, although I believe not intentionally emasculating, was certainly a misstep that will now put a battery in the backs of the viewing public, who will now be counting the days, the minutes, and the hours, and placing bets and timed wagers on exactly when her marriage will fail. And unfortunately, when you open up the sacredness of your marriage and your privacy to the world, you are opening up yourself to not only an adoring public, but also a hateful and a jealous one, and an audience that will feel entitled to have access to every little nook and cranny of your marriage, and they will comb over your marriage with a fine-tooth comb and a magnifying glass, looking for flaws and looking for any opportunity to highlight its imperfections so that they can sleep better at night. Which is why it is always important for women to always move in silence without making any announcements, especially on Beyonce's internet, because the lurkers are waiting in the cut to bring their chaos and their lies. And this will ruffle many feathers to hear, but generally, women who are in happy, loving relationships and marriages are normally attacked by other women, and my married listeners who are in wonderful marriages and relationships can attest to the unfortunate amount of envy and jealousy that will come to your doorstep when you are being provided for and loved on. And this is why you will be very hard pressed to find many public examples of hypergamous women who are being provided for, because when a woman is living the hypergamous life, it will often put a target of hatred on her back, and it simply isn't worth the headache to put your provided for life on display. But as a femininity influencer with an ever-growing platform, it would be so outlandish and so unfeminine and so unprofessional for me to use my platform to irresponsibly and to irrationally browbeat and to harass women who clearly aren't in their feminine and who aren't practicing hypergamy. Because quite frankly, hypergamy and femininity and learning about the necessary harmony of the masculine and the feminine principle are fairly new concepts for many of the women who are tuning in and who are subscribed to this channel. So there are millions of women, particularly Black women, who aren't even educated and who aren't even aware of the power dynamics that are involved in romantic relationships. So to all of a sudden punch an unsuspecting woman in the face with a hypergamous uppercut, or to become too extreme, or now to weaponize and unleash these concepts on unsuspecting women is completely unfair. And it would be very irresponsible of me to assume that Tabitha should know better when it comes to her flub and to the masculina era of her public announcement. Now, I must say that I am not a follower of Tabitha and her beautiful teeth, and I've never seen any of her TikToks, nor do I follow her on Instagram. And although there has been a lot of hearsay, I admittedly know nothing about her marriage, but I do want to share a bit of insight and to do a bit of unpacking when it comes to the hostile and the aggressive weaponizing that has been happening with more than a few undercover masculinas who believe that they are entitled to humiliate, to shame, to bully, to harass, to control, to ambush, and to predict outcomes that haven't even happened. And this behavior is not only very predatory and very harsh and judgmental, but is also very toxic and unfeminine. So just because a woman isn't living the hypergamous life does not mean that she is deserving of harassment or humiliation or shame. Hypergamy and femininity has never been about using it as a weapon to ambush women who often aren't even aware of the masculine and the feminine principles in their marriages. And quite frankly, and this will ruffle a lot of feathers to hear, there will always be more women who are in 50-50 builder relationships than there will be hypergamous ones. And because so many women are super successful hustlers and entrepreneurs and are becoming certified money bag bosses, there are many women who will be in marriages where being the breadwinner or wearing the pants and all of the problems that come with it will be the standard. And as a highlighted point that I made on Instagram, many of your favorite social media influencers are with men right now who make significantly less, or are with men whose bag is directly linked to their woman's bag. And those men are often in the background compared to their bossed up wives and fiancés, who are usually the top earners in their relationship. But that doesn't give me the right to harass, to overstep someone's boundaries, or to make unprovoked think piece videos and dissertations, or to use my femininity, hypergamous, and feminine wellness platform to make predictions about the outcomes of these very public relationships that clearly aren't hypergamous, because that would make me a total predatory cornball to turn someone's relationship into a cautionary tale before it even happens. Cautionary tales, ladies, are always best served when the tea is fully spilled and when the nasty divorce details or the breakup are now becoming public, and when the toothpaste of the relationship can no longer be put back in the tube. So the ladylike thing and the feminine energy thing to do is to give breathing room by allowing these unfinished marriage stories to unfold the way they need to unfold, instead of working overtime looking to jinx and looking for the cautionary tale before it even happens. Now, as for Tabitha, she is obviously very new to the fame game, and she will now be learning the very painful culture shock lesson that new levels will come with new devils, especially when success, money, and putting your marriage out on Front Street for public consumption is in the mix. And more than likely, moving forward, she would need the services of a PR advisor so that she doesn't make the careless mistake again of contributing to a narrative that has now emboldened her confused admirers, aka haters, to emasculate her husband with a narrative that will now be very difficult for him to publicly shake. And when you give people an inch, they will pounce on it and take 10 miles. And when you live your life on the internet, it isn't what you say, it is how you say it. So that is all that I have to say on this for now, ladies and lurkers, and I said a lot. But energetically, we have to be very careful on what we wish upon others. And we have to be very energetically careful of jumping to conclusions and making gross generalizations about a person's lifestyle. Because in spite of what we know about hypergamy, relationships will never be one size fits all. And when you are being messy and are seeking an emotional payoff for seeing the marriages of others fail before it even happens, just remember that the spiritual hole that you dig for others will often be the same hole that you end up falling in yourself. Feminine women, when they are at their best, they look within. They are compassionate. They are understanding, they are full of softness, and they are considerate when it comes to the personal lives of others. But they will also mind the hypergamous business that pays them, because femininity is about evolving from within and allowing others to live and let live. So, ladies and lurkers, does a woman deserve to be harassed for not being hypergamous? Should a woman dump her husband because she is now the top earner and the breadwinner? And would you retire your police officer husband if given the chance? And as always, I look forward to reading your amazing comments below. And stay tuned for more videos to come. And I will catch up with you ladies and lurkers and ear hustlers in the next one.